Great to see you all. I'm James Pearce. It's been my pleasure to work as a communications consultant with Ipswich for the last 3.5 years or so. But today we're going to tell the story, I think maybe I'm biased, but one of the greatest stories in international football over the last 2 or 3 years. A club that was bought in the middle of League One that's now found itself in the Premier League with 2 successive promotions. It's an extraordinary story. The people alongside me maybe have the Midas touch because they're the ones that have bought a club and turned it into a Premier League club in double quick time. So let me introduce you to the panel alongside me. Delighted to introduce you to Ed Schwartz, who's the majority shareholder. He represents a pension fund from Arizona, which I'm sure he'll tell you more about in a minute. Mark Ashton, who's the chairman, also chief executive of the club. Bakay, who represents the Three Lions, one of the initial investors in the club during the game changer takeover. And then Jake Zahnow from Brightpath Sport Partners, who's newer to the team, joined in March when Brightpath joined the investment team, which again Jake will explain much more about in a few minutes' time. But I'm going to kick off with you, Ed, because start off by telling me how a pension fund starts owning an English team.
Well, it's a really great story, and I'd like to make the distinction of how we made this investment very different from, I think, the way a lot of people, a lot of Americans, a lot of others look to make investments, whether it be English football or other sports. What we didn't do is we didn't get investment banking packages. We didn't look for sale signs. We did it a very different way. And Bakay and his partners, Brett Johnson from Three Lions and Mark Detmer, they had an idea that they presented to the chief investment officer of the Arizona Pension Fund. And the idea was quite different and quite unique. They identified what they thought, and certainly what now we all agree, is the best CEO and the best management in all of global football. They met Mark Ashton and they said, Mark, we want to acquire an undervalued English football club. And Mark said, okay, if you really want to do this, we have pension fund backing. We were the representative of the pension fund. And Mark went to work and identified a big club, a great club, but one that was, and he'll tell you more about it, was stripped of everything and was incredibly undervalued. And it wasn't immediate. It took over a year of a lot of hard work. And we were able to acquire the club with the backing of a pension fund, with a business plan, a very sensible business plan, not one that any egos were involved, but one that we could move forward. And then as we became more and more successful, we sat down and said, you know what, we really want to raise some more capital to take it to the next level. And we said, we don't want to just bring in capital and money. There was more to it. We wanted to bring in great strategic people that appreciated what we had built so far and that could help us take it to the next level. And with Jake Zahnow, Brightpath, and his partners at Brightpath Sports Partners, they embraced the vision and they brought us together with some incredible partners and investors, some of who are in the audience today. And forgive me for being long-winded, but I can't tell you that there's ever been something I've been more proud of to be involved with a group of people that are just so professional. It's an emotional sport, emotional investment, but we really take a professional and an institutional type view of this investment.
So Mark, how did this all come together? It was a chance meeting that kicked it all off.
Yeah, I think I was actually presenting at the USL conference. I was certainly had less grey hair and less wrinkles then, Berke. And I met a group called the Three Lions, as you've just identified, who owned Phoenix Rising. And they had a vision that they wanted to invest and own a UK football club. And from there, we built a relationship. They introduced me to the pension fund. And we identified an off-market purchase that was undervalued, had been stripped, so that every dollar that was put in as investment took the business forward. We didn't have to spend 3 years going back, stripping out old contracts before we could go forward. And people will say to me, you know, in the last 3 years, Mark, what's probably been your key decision? What's been your most important decision? Well, the identification of the initial asset was key. Had we got that wrong, we were never, if we didn't enter the corner right, we were never going to exit correctly. So I think that was a key decision. And then we put some rules in place pretty early on how we were going to operate this. This was an incredible bunch of investors and shareholders who backed myself and backed a plan, but they asked us to write the plan, and they would hold us accountable to the plan. But the biggest difference, and I've got 30, 40 years worth of experience at all levels in English football, shareholders own the club. Shareholders do not run the club. And there is an absolute red line between the two. Hold me accountable to the plan, we'll deliver the plan, but the shareholders do not run the business. They do not have the manager's number. They do not go to the training ground. They are not in the locker room. They do not get involved in the selection of the manager. They do not get involved in player recruitment, commercial. There is an executive management team that run the business. And my initial explanation of that to Berke and the pension fund was, look, I've got 30 years worth of experience in this industry and I'm still learning. It's a very regulated industry in the UK. But if you guys ask me to fly a plane tomorrow, the one thing I promise you I'm going to do, I'm going to crash the damn thing. But yet we see institutional money, we see huge sports investment coming from all around the world into UK soccer, thinking that within 24 hours they can run the business. They can't. The executive management team have been empowered since day one. We call it oxygen. They just keep pumping oxygen into us. They've been fantastic. It's a shame that Brett Johnson's not here for us today, and he deserves huge credit. He's just launched in the last few years Rhode Island USL team. It's their inaugural season this year, and I'd just like to congratulate Brett because in his inaugural season they've reached the playoffs. They're now a trophy game away from winning the whole thing, and that's a huge success. But I'm very privileged to work with a group of investors that allow us the oxygen to run the business, stick to the plan, and I think we've had some success in the last couple of years doing it that way.
Berke, you'd been looking for an English club for a while. There were a number of clubs that were quite publicly being touted to be on sale. Ipswich wasn't one of the clubs that was publicly on sale at all. How did you go about choosing what ended up being the right club? And what advice perhaps is for others, there are plenty of them out there at the moment, looking to buy a club in English football?
Thank you. Well, with all due respect to maybe bankers that may be in the room, I think one of the keys to be able to identify a club is something that has not been shopped around. If there's decks flying around on an opportunity in many different places, then you run the risk of overpaying because somebody else's objective in any other part of the world or their capitalization could be very different than yours. So I think like any business, so my business my background is in money management. I'm a deep value investor by my own style. And for me, the most important traits or characteristics of an investment opportunity is that it needs to have the right bones. Maybe the real estate analogy is oceanfront real estate. They don't make more of them. It may be in a really bad rundown condition, but you can go in there and fix it. And right, that's ultimately we ended up, then moving on, and top of the list is without the people running any organization, and more importantly, a football organization, if you don't have a team that knows what they're doing, I think England is full of our competitors and their story is much different than ours. And I think some of the reasons that drove it there is some of the reasons that Mark has described. So we had our vision and clarities set pretty early on, and that was to identify an asset that is off market, that had the legacy. I mean, we have 3 stars at the back of our kit, and that's for the UEFA Cup and FA Cup and an English Championship. So obviously you got the heritage and history that this club had. Then found itself in a very difficult position that over the course of the years, it went from, call it mid-20s to high 20s, close to 30,000 attendance to mid-teens, and in some games, 8,000 to 9,000, right? You had commercial revenues in very difficult position. You had a club that relegated a couple of times and found itself in mid-level third division English football. So those are, in an interesting way, for a deep value investor, those are the exact characteristics of what you're looking for, because people are giving up, that you got the right bones, so with the right people and right capitalization, an off-market deal, like any transaction, it's what you pay and what the value is, right? Those are the two important things. So if all of it came together, then I think you have a successful transaction. And certainly we believe what we're able to accomplish, putting all of the pieces together, is a function of that.
So Jake, you came in much later. The deal was finally completed in March this year when the team wasn't mid-table League One. It was riding high in the Championship, and by that stage had a realistic chance of getting promotion, although far from guaranteed. Talk to me about what it was that managed to help you get some really big-name investors on board in your fund, and why Ipswich, and maybe was it a gamble coming in late in the Championship season, or what was your thinking about coming in then?
Well, I'm going to echo a common theme that I think the three previous gentlemen said. Every investment is about people and who you're investing in and what the strategy is. Berke outlined, value investing. We really looked at it first is, there's 92 teams in the English pyramid. There's a lot of different opportunities. Many of you guys have seen opportunities being shopped right now. But it's really about the management team. And if you think about when you're going to make an investment, there's going to be ups and downs. And certainly our investment group is looking at this as an extremely long investment. And while we were optimistic as to where the team sat at the beginning of last season and certainly at the middle, and of course, when we closed in March, we had an opportunity to be promoted. It was first and foremost, what's the plan, who's executing the plan? And we had a lot of excitement and confidence in our many meetings with Mark and Ed and Berke and his partners that this was the right team to drive this investment no matter what happened. Things go wrong, it's what happens and who's in charge when things go wrong. And so in terms of bringing investors in, we'd always set the expectation with our investors that this was a long-term investment. And while we were excited about where we sat in the middle of last year, because of the long-term vision, I think everybody took the approach of, hey, let's be patient, let's be excited about what we are, but we're in this for the long haul, not for a couple months.
Ed, I want to pick up on something that Mark talked about, and that is owners, in his view anyway, I know it's your view, owners own the club, the management run the club. Talk me through that as an owner who doesn't go to the dressing room, who doesn't have the manager's number, and how important you think that is.
Yeah, so we know all kinds of stories of other situations, and I'll pick on American owners. I did this in the UK, I'll do it here too, the same message. I think a lot of Americans come overseas to the UK, think they know better, and they're going to come and we're going to do it our way. We're smarter, we're arrogant, and it comes across as arrogance, and we're going to do it our way. We're going to go into the dressing room, we're going to tell people what to do, we're going to walk around and act like we own the place. We took a very different approach, and the people that that Jake and his fund and his partners brought in had to accept a very different approach. And that is, we come in to learn and be respectful and be supportive as ownership. Because we think that, and I would argue that even in US sports, if you look at the most successful teams and how they're run, the owner is not that involved at all in the day-to-day operation of the organization. So what you do is you have ownership that provides support, vision, in Mark's words, oxygen to them, but without getting in the way. And that's what we can do. And by the way, when things don't go well, that's when we really have to be extra supportive and extra understanding, because we have a long-term plan. It isn't about a game, a month, a week, and maybe not even a full season. It's about the long term, as Jake said, and about the plan. So I think our role is really important, and we have to just check ourselves, check the emotion, that we're doing everything we can for management to give them the best chance for success.
Mark, we don't just have one of the best stories over the last couple of years of international football. You've also got one of the best-known shirt sponsors, Ed Sheeran, for those who don't know. Tell me a little bit about the relationship with Ed Sheeran, how he's become more on board. Now he's even an investor in the club too, and how that's changed over the time you've been at the club and how important Ed Sheeran is for Ipswich Town now.
Yeah, Ed got involved just before we arrived at the football club, and it was really interesting because it's a hot topic at the moment. Ed's a local man, supports his local football club, happens to be a global superstar, and he was uncomfortable with the fact that we had gaming on the front of our shirts because we're a community-based football club. We work with children in the local community, and he felt it didn't sit right with him. So he paid top dollar. He sponsored the shirt, put his world tour on the shirt, and over the 3 years we've been here, we've built a genuine relationship with him where he's active in the local community, he supports the football club, he's got involved in kit designs, and he's been part of our growth journey. And to give you an example of our growth journey, when we took over the football club, we have crowds of, like you said, 8, 9, 10,000. Even in League One, which is the third tier of English football, we were capping out at 30,000, 22,000 season ticket holders. The record jersey sales that the club had ever accomplished before we took over was around 10,000 per year. We'll do 100,000 this year. Revenues were 13 million when we took over. We'll break through 153, 155 million this year. So all aspects of the football club have moved forward. And we've taken Ed with us on that journey. It's bizarre that you're actually sitting here today because in May, when we were promoted to the Premier League, Ed Sheeran was FaceTiming us in the promotion game against Huddersfield from this very hotel because he was at the Miami Grand Prix and he was FaceTiming our director of comms. We're 1-0 up, we're going to get promoted. He was with us on the journey, but he was in the sports bar here. How bizarre. So he's a very special man. He's going to give the shirt sponsorship up this year because he feels it's time for someone to take it on. But that doesn't mean he's walking away. He's now taken equity in the football club. He's become part of the stack. He wants to be in the long-term future of the football club. We're talking about concerts. We're talking about some really interesting merchandise opportunities with him. Because look, when we launch a kit that he's helped design and he wears it on the opening night of his world tour in Vegas, New York, we have marketing reach that Manchester United, Chelsea, Real Madrid can't get. It's incredible. And yet he's so proud to wear that football kit because he understands the values of the football club and he's part of the family. And we're just delighted to have him with us.
Yeah, Jake, let me bring you in on that because you're the latest person in terms of coming in and raising money. I mean, how much of an advantage is it when you've got someone like Ed Sheeran on the books?
Well, certainly when you look at any business, you want to understand what the upside opportunity is. And when you have arguably the greatest pop star in the world on the front of your shirt, that gives you a lot of optimism that there's a lot of upside in the investment. So, ultimately, it just validated the investment in another way. Beyond the great management, beyond the upside opportunity on the pitch, beyond the upside opportunity with the ancillary, assets that the club has, the Ed Sheeran Association just gives so much more upside to this equation that it's hard to quantify.
James, just on that, a little side from that is obviously when we're trying to recruit players, so we're now in the top pyramid of English football, but we start from the bottom, so we've got to try and persuade talent to join us, and we're in a competitive market with other clubs. So now and again, when we know a talent that we want to acquire as an Ed Sheeran fan, we'll get Ed on the phone, and he'll become part of the recruitment process. I won't mention the player, but we did this with one player in the summer, and again, my director of comms, we were giving a player a tour of the training ground, and he got Ed on a FaceTime call, and we said, Ed, where are you? I'm just about, literally just to go on, I'm just on stage at Wembley. And we said, well, you're not performing tonight. No, I'm on stage with Taylor Swift. And we're like, it just takes the whole thing to a whole nother level. And we have to pinch ourselves that this is a local man who cares about his football club, but takes our global reach beyond football. Because what we are is very different. And this is not a criticism. We're not Wrexham. We're not Birmingham City with Brady. We're Ipswich Town. We are a sanity investment, not a vanity investment. There's a business plan and a model behind this. Premier League staff put into a third-tier English football club, hottest property in probably world management in Kieran McKenna. We're not saying that we are right, it's just our way.
And that player did sign, by the way, too.
Yeah, he did.
It works.
And he's banging in the goals right now.
Yeah, we're giving a few clues now. Berke, something I wanted to talk to you about, the difference between the States and here, and Ipswich, because you've had lots of success with Phoenix Rising, which you invest in. But of course, the big difference is there's no promotion relegation. Sure. If there was no promotion from League One, Ipswich would still be languishing down there. Talk me through, from the eyes of an investor, the disadvantages, the advantages of promotion and relegation.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a very specific example. Phoenix Rising, who I founded and was the chairman of, with my partner Brett Johnson, co-chair for multiple years. We became USL champion last year, in the last season. What's the financial impact of that? Immeasurable, very small. Mark just walked you through the journey of what we have done. So if you are a group of investors or executives that willing to bet on yourself and want your execution and outcome to turn into financial success, then you do take the promotion and relegation risk. That's why when you guys were talking about why England was always on my radar, because I characterize myself as one of those people that willing to bet on myself and my partners. So our sporting success, winning the whole thing in second division in US, did not bring us to MLS, which is the top division, right? But what we were able to do in England did, like Mark described, 12 to 15 times the revenues, not percent, times. So there is tremendous difference between investing in closed systems and open systems.
Would you like to see promotion and relegation here? I guess with the Phoenix Rising hat on, you'd love to see promotion.
I would love to see it, but from the eyes of MLS, you're kind of sitting there, and actually, this is a perfect example. My two very good friends just paid. I'm not going to give the exact number, but you guys can speculate. Incredible amount of money to bring the franchise to San Diego. That's the latest MLS franchise. Do you think those guys want to possibly be relegated? No. So it's very difficult to be able to break the closed system, to be able to bring that. And I think that one of the ways you can only accomplish that if what you're so-called dropping is sustainable in itself. Like Mark just told you, we were having, after he took over, we're having 28, 29,000 people in third division of English football. If you can accomplish that, and media rights somewhat comes with that to a level, then you can convince somebody that gave boatload of money that it's quantifiable risk. 3 out of 20 is 15%. So if you tell somebody, look, you have a 15% probability that things are going to be bad, but then you have higher chance of coming back later with the parachute payments, etc. And all of this thing is going to create a very competitive environment in which collectively the media revenues are going to grow, and it's going to get good for everybody. I love that model. And but US sports system is unique in its way that it's quite the opposite of that.
And Ed, to pick up on that as well, one of the other differences between the UK and the US is maybe when a team in the US is very successful, they just keep on hiking the ticket prices. So as an American owner, talk me through getting used to the English culture and how you respect the English fans.
Yeah, I'll laugh at myself a little bit. When we first came in, and again, we were educating ourselves as ownership. I was looking at the numbers, and we're down in League One, and ticket sales were a bigger portion of our revenue than they are now. And I said, well, why can't we push the ticket prices this much? And if it were just this much, and keep pushing it, and I just looked at the actual numbers, and your frame of reference is where you live. You live in the U.S. You can't believe how cheap the ticket prices are in the U.K. But as I educated myself more, and maybe sounded silly to our management, but again, we have very, very open dialogue and really good debates about these things. They said, yeah, you can do that. You can raise ticket prices that level, but you will have a fan revolt. You will have government coming in and taking a closer look at that. And you really have to, again, stop yourself before even making these suggestions. Think about the impact, think about the frame of reference. And there's so many things that are different and perceived very differently in the UK. And if you don't believe it, look at those people that have done that and made the mistakes and what has happened, because it's out there. And so, again, that's another example of you know, the role that we play and having to listen and learn and not come in and be a bull in the china shop and try to tell them what to do, because in many cases it's just not, it's just very, very different.
Mark, Kieran McKenna, one of the most in-demand managers now in English football. How did you keep him in the summer?
I think if you take a step back, part of our business model is recruitment and development of talent. That's not just players on the pitch, that's staff off the pitch. So in my history, I look at young up-and-coming coaches, managers that we can develop and can go on the journey with us. We tracked Kieran for 2 years, former Tottenham Hotspur, former Manchester United, finished the game as a player at a very young age, but then had an incredible education as a coach under some of the biggest managers in the world. So, you know, Kieran joined us, and he joined a management team that believed would back him and wouldn't interfere. So again, it's important from a young coach's perspective that you build infrastructure, you build world-class performance, medical, data, analytical teams around them to give them the oxygen to be the best versions of themselves. And when we did that with Kieran, you know, we took a League One team through to the Premier League. We beat Tottenham, if anyone hadn't noticed, on Saturday, on Sunday, with a number of players that were playing for us in the third tier of English football. So, you know, success just brings a different set of challenges. And in the summer when we were promoted, we had three clubs, two of which were potentially the biggest clubs in England, wanting to take his services. But my job was not to persuade Kieran McKenna to stay. My job was to show him the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses of all the different decisions he had to make, and then trust the process, Kieran. And we went through a week of that. Ed flew over, which Kieran was really honoured by and felt the respect. And ultimately he came to his own decision, because whilst we're in the Premier League, it's not the end. It's just simply the end of the beginning. And we have much more of our journey to go. Kieran has much more growth and development to go, as we all do. And he's the right club, the right manager, the right time. And I think come the end of the season, we'll go on to the next level, because what we've proved on Sunday is we've gone to what, again, is deemed one of the biggest clubs in Europe, and we've won.
I will, in a few minutes, by the way, ask if anyone's got any questions from the audience. I'm guessing you might have. So if you do, you will get a chance to. Wait a moment, but you'll get a chance in a minute. But have a think. Berke, what's it like being in America? You're a really passionate football fan. Anyone who knows Berke knows just how much football's running through his veins. It has from a very young age. What's it like being a part owner of a club, watching it on a screen rather than being in a stadium for lots of the other matches?
It's so painful that I seriously considered moving my 4 kids aged between 2 and 17 at least for a year. I still do. I told my wife, I said, I can't go through my life and have an opportunity like this and not enjoy every minute of it. It's like, to your point, little background, I was born in Istanbul, massive Galatasaray fan. And just to give you, I was a middle school student, like the school bus will drop me and we would have a European Cup games. I remember like playing with Roma, etc. I would just turn from the school, and those days they wouldn't call you. Like every time my kids are 5 minutes late to the school, I get email, text, and phone calls. Those days, that didn't happen, and I would go to the stadium 8 in the morning, wait until, and those were midday games, like 2, 3 in the afternoon, and watch the game and come home pretending that I was going to school at 12 years old. So that's who I am, and it is incredibly painful to not be there every moment. And it's a long flight. I go there as much as I can. I try to go there, you know, every 5 or 6 weeks or so, but I wish I could just live every minute of it. I really want to go see all the grounds in England. I'm doing well on my list. I think I'm more than halfway through, but would love to do more of it on a personal level.
And Jake, we've talked about the investment. We haven't talked so much about the investors. Tell us a little bit about those who've come on board with Brightpath earlier this year, and what big name investors can bring to a club that's already doing so well.
Yep. So we are blessed to have some incredible investors in our capital stack. We have some very large family offices, some of which are here today, 2 of which are here today, that run, that have big 4 investments in the US. So these folks are very familiar with investing in sport, albeit a different type of investment, as Ed explained earlier. So we have a range of family offices with experience in sports, and then we also have a fund in terms of Avenue Capital, also inside of our investment stack, who invests across the sports universe, both on the equity and on the debt side. And look, going back to the why on this investment, this is a disciplined investment. This is not an emotional investment, although it can be emotional. And we really think that we were lucky in order to find people that are extremely aligned with looking at this as a very long-term, very sane, very unemotional investment. And it just so happened we're way ahead of plan. So right now I think everybody is excited.
I'm going to ask one more question to Mark before I open to the floor. And I'm pretty sure this is a question that will produce a little bit of energy from Mark when I say to him, what do you make of having VAR now you're in the Premier League, Mark?
I can't believe you brought me to Miami to ask me that question. Yeah, I've seen 1 or 2 refs walking around the conference this week. They might have some interesting conversations this week. Feel free to ask them questions. I'm someone who's been, for those who, I'm presuming we all know what VAR is. It's the virtual refereeing system that is supposed to support the challenges of refereeing in the modern game. Look, I'm someone I'm a purist. I've been brought through all the divisions in England. It's a system that's only active in the English Premier League. I think we've been frustrated by it this season. We've been disappointed by it this season at times, albeit we were supported by it in our game on Saturday. Sunday against Tottenham. So look, it's a new brave world. I think if it's implemented correctly, referees have a very, very difficult job. The only thing I ever ask for referees is consistency. And so what we ask of VAR is consistency. If a decision is checked and ultimately that's given against us, so be it. But if we have something that we think should be checked, please just check it. And once you've checked it, if there's a reason why it's not a penalty or a free kick or whatever, so be it. But it's that consistency across the board. I understand referees have a difficult job, a very difficult job. But from a VAR perspective, I want more consistency. I want more transparency. And I think that's key for it if it's going to remain with us.
Thank you.
I can't believe you've asked that question, by the way, James.
We might get more words from the floor. There's a gentleman in the grey shirt. Mark's got a microphone. He'll bring to you. I know he had his hand up. Just to your right there, Mark. There you go.
Hi, how you doing, guys? So as founders of a new club in the 3rd division of Ecuador, we're 4 games away to possibly making it to 2nd division. This is our first year. We want to ask what would be the best advice for us to approach international funds that might be interested in investing overshores long term.
Do you want to take that?
I can take that. Look, I think the blueprint is pretty simple. First of all is have a plan. Make sure that your management is a part of that plan, not just the ownership group. And B, market that plan. It's really no different than any other investment, but those 2 key things are easy to say but hard to come by. And that's really what's unique here, is there was a plan and there was a management team, and frankly the marketing of the opportunity became a lot easier because of it. So I don't know.
Berke, do you want
Maybe
to?
I may add, first of all, I have very fond memories of Ecuador with Phoenix Rising. We did a pre-season there when we had Didier Drogba and others. It was incredible football-loving country, and I have many dear friends. And what I will tell you is your country has been an incredible provider of talent over the course of the years. So if there's a model that you could show the investors that somewhat that talent, results in their investment and they can so-called benefit from that, and that was part of the vision, that could be very, very attractive. You could actually call me up. I'll look at it.
Gentleman on the third row, Mark. Then there's a lady to the other side.
Hi, how are you? Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to listen to the history of the club. It's amazing. I love soccer, football. For me, I'm from Brazil, so football. I love to understand a little bit as a soccer coach for youth players, what you guys are developing there, because especially with short budget, compare what you guys have there, right? What are you guys doing with the youth soccer there?
Mark.
Again, in England, youth soccer is very regulated. We are in what we call the EPPP system. We are currently Cat 2. We are just applying for Cat 1 license. It's a fundamental part of our business plan because Ipswich, if you own a club in the north of England or the northwest, there's Manchester City, Manchester United, Bolton, Wigan, Liverpool, the list goes on. Ipswich, it's a one-county club, so there is no clubs in the local vicinity. There's a small club, a really small club that's miles down the road that play in yellow. I think they're called, was it Norwich or something? Something like that. No. Sorry. So we need to hoover the talent. We need to warehouse the talent. And we need to develop the talent from 9 through to 16s and then 16s through to 23. That's a key part of our business and development plan. We actually just announced yesterday the commencement of the building of a new training ground, and that will be again to develop young up-and-coming talent. It's something that's very, very important to us, and we'll see more. And in our team now, there are players that have come right through from Luke Wolfenden, who's played in the Premier League this season, joined Ipswich at 9, and is now playing in the Premier League for us. So it's key.
What's the financial model behind an academy? Because a good academy presumably pays for itself and over again.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've heard this. I've worked for owners in the past who've questioned academies. You have some Premier League clubs who have closed academies because they believe they should only concentrate on the top end. I'm 53. I started my journey at football as a 13-year-old at West Bromwich Albion in the old academy system. It's the lifeblood of our game. It's vital to our game. So, at some point you sell players and you trade players. You can trade players from 9 years of age to other clubs, but it's just certainly, we have to give both the 9-year-old boy and the 9-year-old girl the opportunity to play for Ipswich Town's first team, so that academy youth pathway is vital to us.
Hi, I'm Cassie with the Bank of Montreal. You mentioned that the jersey deal with Ed is coming to an end. I was wondering if you could share what you're looking for in a new sponsor.
We're looking for a non-gaming sponsor because we're not saying that that's right or wrong, but for our football club, we don't believe it's a path that we should tread. So initially, I would like that to be a local company. And I think one of the things that we've seen globally is Ed Sheeran will stay with us on another part of the kit. So the association for a global sponsor to be associated with Ed is absolutely key to us because it takes their brand into places that a normal football club wouldn't. And I think one of the things that we're looking to do is, because we've got US ownership, is to take Ipswich Town and its brand into the US. The advice that we've been given consistently is if we simply come and play friendlies and take the team to the US, we won't make a dent. There'll be noise around the game, but the minute we leave, you'll go back to baseball, basketball, USL, etc. So the fact that we have a global superstar that could help take an associated sponsor into a world market puts us in a very different space. So we're looking for good partners, and I think it's really key that we're not looking for a sponsor, we're looking for a partner. And the key is partnership.
Thank you. Do you mind passing the microphone down to the man in the white shirt, the next row along? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. First of all, congratulations, amazing story. I had a season ticket at Ipswich during the George Burley days when we finished fifth in the Premier League. Yeah, so I was in the academy as well. Clearly wasn't very good, got kicked out, but that's all right. I'll forgive you, you weren't there. Question for Mark or anyone there, I guess investors as well, is PSR. How frustrating is it with the Premier League's PSR rules? And do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think it needs to change? Is it, as it seems from the outside, a bit of a thumb on clubs to keep them outside the top six, all this sort of stuff that goes on? What do you think?
That's an educated question. How long have you got? Listen, my position in the Premier League is the same as it was in the Championship. Currently, PSR is outdated. So if you just look at a Championship club, you can lose 39 million, 30 million a year over a rolling 3-year period. But that 13 million a year loss was set 15 years ago. Inflation, cost of living, cost of play, everything's increased. So the number just simply doesn't work. I think, look, at heart, I'm a capitalist. So I would prefer no rules. And I'd back ourselves to stick to our own rules, but I understand the need for rules. So there are two things. One, if you have rules, you need to stick to them. And I think there's been too much ambiguity with clubs getting away with things potentially over the last few years. A lot of noise in the press around that. Big cases in the Premier League ongoing. But I think there needs to be a form of financial controls, because if you don't, all that's going to happen is revenue is going to grow, broadcast deals are going to grow, and it's going to fall straight out the other end into player salary inflation, into agents, etc. So you've got a bookend. How that's done and how that's achieved, I think, is key. And the numbers around that, I believe, need to be updated, because I think they're old numbers that aren't relevant. For a club like Ipswich, it's really tough. Why? Because we have not been in the top flight for 20 years. So our revenues, even though at 153 million from 13 million is huge growth, you have Southampton and Leicester, who we were promoted with, whose squad is 50% still a Premier League squad because they were there 2 years ago and are on parachute payment. So they naturally start ahead of us so they can spend more. So it puts us at a real disadvantage. And I think the rules need to be modernised. I think they will be modernised. I think there's some really bright brains in the Premier League. But I do think there needs to be sustainability rules that protect the long-term future of clubs.
Thank you.
We're pretty much running out of time. Is there one more question? Anyone who's got a question? Raise your hand if you do. No, well, that's fine, because we're up. Our time is officially up anyway. I'll be getting a hard stare from Mark anyway if we go on.
James, can I just say one thing? I've run football clubs for many, many years. We're not a widget factory. We don't make a product. It's a people business. It's about the players. It's about the fans. It's about the board. It's about the investors. It's about the staff, etc. It's about the sponsors. It's about the community. And when people look at this investment here and the success we've had in the last 2 to 3 years, it's about one thing and one thing only. It's about the people. And in any organisation, if it's not right at the top, it will not be right through the organisation. And football in England in particular, when you lose, every weakness is exposed. Every single weakness is exposed. So we've had a real challenging start to our first 10 games in the top flight of English football. Where I'm so privileged and why this ownership group is so special are the shareholders. I have a difficult job every day, but my challenge is in front of me. My battle is out there. The minute I have to look over my shoulder at what the shareholders are doing, are they being disingenuous? Are they not telling the truth? We're in a world of trouble. And I'm blessed to have a group that pump oxygen into not just me, the rest of the management team. So we take the fight to the other 19 clubs in the Premier League, and to anyone who's involved in UK football or football around the world that's looking for investment. I think that for me is my key advice, is it's not about the money, it's about the people.
Well, we know we've got one Ipswich fan in the audience. Hopefully you've gained a few more over the last 45 minutes or so. Best of luck for the rest of the season, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, everyone.